Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for part 2 of our Municipal Community Generation Challenge Successful Projects webinar series. We're here today to talk about the Town of Smoky Lake Métis Crossing Solar Project. So my name is Mark Baxter. I'm the program lead for our renewables programs here at the Municipal Climate Change Action Center. Also from the Action Center, we have behind the scenes Stephanie Ripley, project coordinator for the renewables team. And on the line as well, we have a large team from both the Town of Smoky Lake and the Métis Nation of Alberta, who will be talking about their project moving into this presentation. So we're very excited to have them here with us. With that, I'm going to jump right into things here. So a short agenda for today's presentation. I'm just going to start with a bit of a background on the Municipal Climate Change Action Center for anybody who may not be overly familiar with us at this point. Talk about our impact to date and who we are. I'll then spend a little bit of time talking about the Municipal Community Generation Challenge itself, which is the program that this project was funded through. Talk about the background, how that program came to be, as well as the application process that this team went through in order to be successful in the program. At that point, I'll hand it over to the team from the project who will talk about the project in much more detail, talking about their progress to date and what's to come down the road. So that will make up the bulk of the presentation this afternoon. And then we'll have some time for the Q&A as well. So we'll encourage you to type any of your questions into the Q&A box at any time throughout the presentation or save them to the end. And Stephanie will be helping me coordinate the Q&A session at the end. So we'll definitely have some time to get to all of those. So also just wanting to start things off with a acknowledgement here that this presentation is being presented from Treaty 6 territory, at least from my perspective here in Edmonton, and we have some presenters from across, I believe some of you are across the province right now, elsewhere across different treaties. So just wanting to acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries and whose presence continue to enrich our vibrant communities. So about the Action Center itself, the Municipal Climate Change Action Center was founded in 2009 as a collaborative initiative between the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, Rural Municipalities of Alberta, and the Government of Alberta. So really essentially those partners all came together to establish this group, which has since received a number of grants from the Government of Alberta, which we've delivered to municipalities, schools, nonprofit, community-related organizations, to assist them with undertaking clean energy and energy efficiency projects, as well as providing advisory services to help them all with this space. So our impact to date, a few slides or a few stats for you on this slide rather, that we're very proud of. 337 participants have participated in MCCAC programs since we were established, completing almost 600 projects. In terms of solar PV capacity specifically, we have currently 14 megawatts of installed capacity funded through our programs, and that's definitely not including the large solar project to come that you'll be learning about today in this presentation. So very excited to have that added to that stat in the coming years as well. In terms of employment, the MCCAC has been a contributor to 435 full-time jobs created through its programs in the municipalities around Alberta from our solar and energy efficiency projects. And obviously, we're very pleased with the emission reductions we've seen through these great municipal projects as well, of almost 400,000 tons of CO2 equivalent. So some real impacts there. In terms of the Municipal Community Generation Challenge itself, I'm just going to spend some time talking about this specific initiative from the MCCAC and how it came to be. So the program was launched in partnership with Alberta Innovates through what is known as their Climate Change Innovation and Technology Framework, or the CCITF. So essentially, at the time, the MCCAC and Alberta Innovates got together and realized we were both having a shared mandate to support Alberta's municipalities in developing low carbon community scale electricity generation projects, specifically through assisting the development of networks and partnerships in these projects. So it was a natural fit for us to combine our various areas of expertise to help municipalities in taking this on. So the goal was for these projects through the program to produce significant community benefits for the municipalities and the partners involved, including reduced greenhouse gas emissions, diversification of the local economies, and a big piece for us as well, as you're kind of seeing through this webinar, is a knowledge transfer component to other municipalities from the work of the successful projects. So we're hoping that this is a good first step in that knowledge transfer component today. So the program was launched in March of 2019. It was delivered in a multi-stage application process, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the next slide. Lead applicants to the program were required to be Alberta municipalities, and then the project networks that the program required at least 3 partners, including the municipality, as well as an Alberta small to medium-sized enterprise. Projects must have met the definition of a community generating unit as per Alberta's small scale generation regulation, as this program came shortly after the announcement of that regulation, which was released essentially to kind of lower the barriers to municipalities and community groups in the province for developing larger, excuse me, distribution connected renewable energy projects. So for that multi-stage application process that we ran with Alberta Innovates, the first stage was what we called the letter of interest, or LOI stage. Submissions for this were due May 10th, 2019. It was an open call to all municipalities in the province to basically let us know whether they would be interested in participating in a program like this to lead to a development of a community generation project. We received 43 letters of interest from municipalities across the province, and at that time basically just screened them for that eligibility criteria mentioned in the first slide, and invited them on if they were still interested to participate in stage 2, which was the expression of interest, or EOI stage. The submission deadline for this stage was August 9th, 2019. 21 of the 43 first round of municipalities decided that they wanted to proceed to submitting a more detailed expression of interest once learning more about the program. And so this stage, the expression of interest, like I said, included some more detail on the project itself, as well as really the big piece here was the network formation. So staff from Alberta Innovates were a big assistance during this stage in connecting municipalities who were interested to the relevant network partners and industry partners across the province to build these connections for project development, as we did identify that for a number of municipalities in the province, they had a high interest in this type of development, but just weren't overly connected to the right players. So that was a big piece that we focused on in stage 2, is bringing those network teams together. And then finally, the stage 3 was the full project proposal, or FPP stage. The municipalities that were screened in from stage 2, which were 10 municipalities, were invited to submit full project proposals by January 8th, 2020, as well as make a presentation to a panel of reviewers from MCCAC, Alberta Innovates, and other industry leaders in the province. And from the full review of the full project proposals and the presentations made to the review panel, 2 projects were selected for funding, one of which being who we're here to talk about today, which is the Town of Smoky Lake's Métis Crossing Solar Project. So just to give a very brief overview of this project before handing it over to the team to talk about it in much more detail. This is the Town of Smoky Lake's Métis Crossing Solar Project, which will be receiving a total of $3.9 million in funding from the Action Centre over the coming years, which will lead to the development of a 4.86 megawatt solar PV system. This will be the most northern grid-connected solar project of significant size in Alberta, and was a partnership between the town, county, and the Métis Nation of Alberta. So without taking any more time from the project team here, I'll hand it over to Adam, who will be speaking first on behalf of the Town of Smoky Lake. And Andreas, if you want to go ahead and get your slides up there, I'll cue Adam up as well. Okay, you're good to go, Adam.
Thank you, Mark, for putting this webinar together and for inviting us to talk about our exciting projects. My name is Adam Kozakevich. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer of Town of Smoky Lake. I'm happy and excited to talk about this project at the Métis Crossing Solar Project. The Métis Crossing Solar Project is really the story of a partnership. 3 communities coming together: the Town of Smoky Lake, the Métis Nation of Alberta, and Smoky Lake County. But the friendship and the community enjoy began long before the formation of the above-mentioned legal bodies. Smoky Lake region has been traditional territory of the Métis before Canada was formed in 1867, and the settlers here have traditionally been friends with the Métis. Most recently, the town and the county and Métis Nation have collaborated on many regional projects, including a regional infrastructure plan, economic development plan, Métis Crossing Cultural Gathering Center, which is an amazing place, and I really strongly recommend you guys come and visit. Also, redevelopment of a $4 million old healthcare facility who was going to get mothballed, possibly destroyed, with a $900,000 investment by the M&A into the facility to make it into a place where their workers can stay that work at the gathering center and the solar project. So when we at the Town of Smoky Lake learned about the Municipal Climate Change Action Center had an exciting opportunity to jumpstart the investment in renewables in our region, it was natural to talk to our partners around on how we can collaborate and seize this opportunity to meet some of our common goals. Next. I also wanted to thank a few partners. I think it's important to note that it takes a lot of partners to make a project like this go forward regionally. Not only does the community need to come together, which you see the top 3, but you also need the technical people like the Municipal Climate Changer, Peter's Energy Solutions, and Innovates, or Alberta government that we've accessed to do this. But there's even more partners than that. Next. And in our project team. So here's our project team, which we have available here. You see myself. Actually, you see Juanita here. She's going to talk there. You got Trevor Anderson from Economic Development Manager at Métis Crossing. Juanita is the Executive Director at Métis Crossing. Andre is Fela, I always say that wrong somehow, is the Manager of Climate Leadership at Métis Nation of Alberta. Robert Henry, who's the Senior Consultant with Peter Energy Solution. Kyle Scholey, who's Planning and Development and Heritage Assistant for Smoky Lake County, who's here in my office. Behind me, you can't see him, but he's here. And that's the team that's the core team that we've engaged to make this possibility. And now we'll pass it on to Anita to talk about a bit more about the Métis Crossing and the significance of the project.
Thank you, Adam, for that introduction and overview of our partnership. I just wanted to introduce a little bit about Métis Crossing, and it is a very significant site to the Métis Nation of Alberta. Geographically, we are located within the county of Smoky Lake, and we are an hour and 20 minutes northeast of Edmonton, or 2 days by Voyageur canoe, whichever you choose to travel by. Can you go to the next slide, Andres? Our mission: we are a major initiative of the Métis Nation of Alberta. We are a premier destination for Alberta Métis cultural interpretation, education, gatherings, and business development. We have 512 acres, and the site is designed to engage and excite our visitors, and our programming encourages active participation of visitors in activities promoting an appreciation of our people, our customs, and our celebrations. So that's a bit of a hint of why we situated it at Métis Crossing. I'm now going to share with you a little bit of a video that tells you a little bit more about who we are culturally and the significance of this place.
I always heard from our people, our elderly people, when are we going to have a place to tell our story?
My name is Tiffany Shaw-Collins. I'm the project architect for Métis Crossing. So it was a really interesting journey to come into this project thinking about what should the space be in terms of a more larger architectural question.
I think of Métis Crossing really as a hub that we're all connected by the heartstrings to this one central location.
Wherever I go in Alberta as a Métis, I can call this home for us. This is a place that we can all collectively together and call it our place, our home.
Thank you, Andres. Can we go to the next slide? So Métis Crossing has 4 main goals. The first is to share our Métis story with all people. The second is to be a gathering place. The third is to achieve financial sustainability. And the fourth is to minimize capital debt. So this project we're working on now feeds into all of those. Certainly we share our Métis stories within this beautiful cultural gathering center that we are seeing right now, but there's more to it. Can you go to the next slide, Andres? We have 512 acres, and this is really key to it as well. And when you look around this 512 acres in our site plan, you see a buffalo paddock and research center. You see the solar field on the north end, trapline and tanning experiences. And what we're trying here is a place to share our past, our present, and our future with all visitors. And the solar field provides us such a unique opportunity. So when people come up and they're touring Métis Crossing and they're brought to the north end of our property, they'll actually be able to walk on a trail where on the south side of the trail you see the bison, which are so foundational to our history of governance and a judicial system and our cultural system. And then right next to them on the north side, you'll see the solar field, which is really where the Métis Nation is going as a group of people. So that is why we are here at Métis Crossing, and now I'm going to let Andres talk a little bit more about the project.
All right, thanks, Juanita. So I'm really happy. So Juanita and Adam have talked a little bit about the great things that were happening around Métis Crossing and their collaboration on multiple projects. I want to talk to people around a little bit about what else was happening with the M&A around 2017. So in 2017, the Métis Nation of Alberta had been engaging with its citizens around climate change and what it should be doing in regards to this issue. So the Métis Nation of Alberta visited around 18 Alberta Métis communities. Over 300 citizens were engaged, anywhere from Fort McMurray to Lethbridge, from Rocky Mountain House to Lloydminster. And we asked 2 key questions really. How have you experienced climate change, and how should the M&A respond to this threat? And one thing that we heard is, whereas there was a lot of feedback on, we need to make sure that we understand the impacts, we need to monitor the impacts, there was also a call for action for the Métis Nation. We should do something to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That's really, and out of that, what we got is the Métis Nation of Alberta holds an annual General Assembly every year. And it's a space where Métis citizens gather and discuss issues for the nation and vote on motions and pass resolutions. So this is an excerpt of a resolution that was passed at the 89th Annual General Assembly in Peace River. And it specifically directed the Métis Nation of Alberta government to design and undertake climate change initiatives and programs, including actions aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions and increasing Métis involvement and awareness of climate change, while creating capacity and economic opportunity for Métis citizens. So out of that, the Métis Nation of Alberta launched something that we call the Climate Change Action Plan, Métis Nation of Alberta Climate Change Action Plan. And you can see on the right of your screens there, its 5 core goals: greenhouse gas emissions reduction, education and awareness, developing capacity, and creating opportunities for M&A and citizens. Really the same things that we saw on that annual General Assembly resolution. And so one of the things that we started thinking around at the administration of Métis Nation of Alberta was, what could we do that would have a large impact around these goals? And you know what, like at the time we had been planning, and as of now, we have completed smaller retrofit projects and smaller solar projects. There was really kind of a conversation, and we really want to have some meaningful impact on those goals. And so the idea around a large-scale renewable energy project came to mind. Unfortunately, at that time, there was a funding for Indigenous communities to look at that possibility, right? So we'll talk a little bit about what the development process entails, but it was also kind of a search for land, because for these type of projects, you usually need land. So I think that's where Métis Crossing kind of connected. It was a site that had land, and so it seemed like a natural state. And above and beyond, there had been a great collaboration brewing between different partners, and you do want to make sure that you have that community collaboration happening. And something that's interesting that I like to mention here, people sometimes ask, how did you come up, or how did the M&A come up with 4.86 megawatts? And actually, that was a 5 megawatts initially. 5 megawatts actually is the amount of capacity that we estimated would be required to offset the electricity load of all M&A operations. So the Métis Nation of Alberta and its regions and its locals own some facilities. We have a provincial office, 6 regional offices, local offices. And there's also one of its affiliates, Métis Capital and Métis Urban Housing Corporation, who provide housing for Indigenous families. They operate roughly 800 residential units. So it was a significant footprint. And so that's how we came up with the 5 megawatts, which later, through some technical stuff, ended up at 4.86 megawatts. And so I wanted to just quickly go through the overview process, because I figured people would be interested in. Usually there's 3 main steps. So I here have the first 2. Phase 1 is a pre-feasibility study. That's where you really see, on a desktop level, does this project make sense? Is there enough resource there? Is there land available? Is there anything major? Right? Is there wildlife around? You probably don't want to put your project when there's wildlife around. Is there a major economic risk? What are the community benefits? Again, just as a desktop study. We completed that in 2018. And so I just wanted to I'm going to touch base on phase 2 in a little bit, but I wanted to touch base on some things that I thought would be interesting for people to just to be aware of. So, we looked at different type of resources. We have a parcel of land, Métis Crossing. What would a wind project be possible, or would a solar project be possible? And usually what you like to look at is there enough resource? So does the wind blow enough so that we can generate enough power to create some revenue? Is there enough sunlight? Is there enough geothermal energy? So on and so forth. So what we found from that study is that really solar appeared to have all those checks and appeared to be reasonably positioned for a project there. We also looked at different areas, right? And you want to make sure that you engage with people with expertise to guide you in this kind of analysis. So we actually look at 6 different areas within Métis Crossing where we figured it would be perhaps a good area to put solar panels. Something that was really interesting about this project, it was actually in a historic site. So there's very specific viewscape requirements. And so, putting it in areas 5 or 6 was potentially not that great. And that's how, amongst other things, how we ended up selecting this northern portion of Métis Crossing. So the area that you see highlighted in yellow here is the area where the solar field would go, the Métis Crossing Solar Project. And Métis Crossing logo right now is where the Cultural Gathering Center, the facility that we saw in that video, where that's located right now. This is what the area looks like today. It was previously farmland, so we did make sure not to disturb vegetation that was around there. And some of the things that you look at in pre-feasibility, right? In this case, I'm showing a map here of wetlands, so there's specific setbacks that you want to follow. So there's a couple of areas that, in partnership with our environment consultant, and as well, we had to engage AAP at some point, know, you need to make sure that you don't encroach into these buffer zones. And you also, again, want to make sure that you are aware of the local distribution and transmission infrastructure. In our case, this is a project that's connected to the distribution infrastructure, you know, the kind of the smaller cables that go into towns and cities. And, you know, you want to have a good awareness of what's there. You'll learn through this process that the further away that you are from a connection point, whether that be distribution on transmission, your project tends to get exponentially more expensive. That usually is a project killer. And so going back to that, so that was all part of that pre-feasibility piece. And then after you complete the pre-feasibility studies, you kind of have an idea of whether or not it makes sense to keep going, or maybe if it doesn't make a lot of sense to do. And then on phase 2, it's really about having people at the site actually look at what are the environmental issues, you know, looking at the geotechnical, so actually drilling holes and see what you have there. Can you actually put something on the ground there? You want to engage your detailed engineers so that they can provide more definite estimates. Phase 1 might be a plus minus, let's say 30 to 50%. This, you really want to trim that down here. You want to make sure that you have less error and more certainty on the costs. Want to engage with your community for participant involvement program. And more importantly, you want to make sure that you start and complete all the permitting and regulatory pieces. And I think this is really where most of the time is spent. And you know what? Happily, the Métis Crossing Solar Project has completed all major regulatory approvals right now, with Alberta Utilities Commission's approval being retained 2 weeks ago. So what are the next steps? We've secured a significant portion of the funds needed to build this project. We're still looking for additional funds, so we continue to engage funders, we continue to engage financial institutions to make sure that we're able to realize this project. And if everything goes to plan, the target dates for construction and completion are August 2021 and April 2022, respectively. How much does it cost in terms of capital cost? Right now, we're estimating around $13 million. You know, this includes a whole bunch of administrative costs as well and project management costs. And where does it go? And as you can see from this slide, a lot of it is equipment. Your solar panels, so that's major PV equipment, your racking, stuff like that, AC equipment, your transformers, for instance, installation services and equipment. This is, you know, your installers, mobilization, demobilization costs. Interconnection is really important. How do we connect to the cable, right, to the transmission lines, essentially? And there's a bit there for contingency. And now, while the technical piece is really important, I also wanted to make sure that we left a little bit of time to talk about how to model your partnership. And so what Juanita had talked about and Adam had talked about is that the town of Smoky Lake and Smoky Lake County had been in a lot of discussions with the Métis Nation of Alberta on different projects. When the idea of a large-scale renewable project came to mind, one of the discussions that we had was, you know, what do we want to accomplish as a result of a project like this? And some of the things that we heard from the municipal partners are, you know, we really want to make sure that this is a kind of a mechanism so that we can incentivize some sort of economic development within the area, or perhaps look at the potential for renewable energy and green energy projects. And something that we found is that those desires really align with some of the things that the Métis Nation of Alberta Climate Change Action Plan and through our engagements we've already had heard. The desire for economic development or opportunities for the Métis citizens and Métis Nation was there, and then the call to action was there. So it really aligned quite nicely. One thing that was specific determining factor in terms of ownership for this project. And I wanted to mention this because it kind of related to our involvement with the Municipal Climate Change Action Center is, interestingly, Section 95 of the Utilities Act restricts the ability of municipalities to own generation units. So, I mean, you can do it. I mean, it involves a few extra steps, but that was one thing that we kind of talked about. It's like, well, you know, like there's this restriction. You can't really own. Is there any way that we can still realize those benefits without perhaps the requirement of ownership? And we also heard a lot of thought around risk aversion, and you know, we have to invest quite a bit of money, potentially municipal funds, to realize these benefits. So there's a risk there. And so this is how the idea of a community development fund came to mind, is could we perhaps set up a community development fund and take some of the profits generated at this community-owned project and put it on a local community development fund. And so the town, county, and the M&A are working together to set this up. And the hope is that this community development fund would incent the type of economic activity and renewable energy projects that is what the municipal partners desired. You know, other benefits, of course, there's multiple benefits. I think there is a list of about 20 that we've come up with. But just in terms of revenue, you know, revenue in itself is a benefit, and it's a little bit different in the fact that the Métis Nation of Alberta hopes to own this. So, you know, we'll talk a little bit about what that means. It's not just money, it's about the programs that the M&A hopes to accomplish with this. We also, the project is exploring community investment opportunities. So we are engaged right now looking at co-op opportunities for ways where like either citizens or local Smoky Lake town or county residents could invest in this project. Very important, a significant portion of tax revenue to Smoky Lake County. We've also looked at renewable energy knowledge sharing, so there will be a designated interpretation area or display within the Métis Nation, Métis Crossing Culture Gathering Center, and of course, greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So this project will abate 4,700 tons of CO2 per year. That's roughly equivalent to 1,100 Alberta homes. And where does all the revenue go? So there is quite a bit of expenses to pay in terms of operations. And of course, it requires quite a bit of financing. So debt is a big portion. So you'll see that kind of on the blue and orange here. But I also wanted to bring attention to the yellow, light blue, and green there. That's where we see that benefit, right? There's a significant portion of that going to the county there. So there's a vested interest in that partner to make sure that this community-owned project is realized. The community development funds and what that means for the town, what it could mean in terms of economic activity, and the project equity returns, right? And what that means for the Métis Nation of Alberta. And I wanted to kind of close it with some of the pictures of what that means. And through the last 3 years, the Métis Nation of Alberta has been able to secure funds or do some projects in regards to climate change. So these are just some of the photos here. On the top left, we have a community engagement that we held in our Region 4, where we were talking about sustainable practices and how to live life more sustainably. On the top right, this is our office in Peace River, and we were able to help, we were able to complete a energy efficiency retrofit there. On the bottom left there, this is actually a rooftop of our Grand Prairie Elders Caring Shelter. So it is a facility that a Métis Nation local owns there in Grand Prairie that cares for some of our elders. So we were able to help them install a small solar project to, help with some of the electricity bills and at the same time reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And on the bottom right there, this is a nature walk that we coordinated within Edmonton. And again, so those are the type of projects that this piece here, where we see this green piece, equity returns, what does that mean? That's, this potentially is a mechanism for the Métis Nation of Alberta to continue these initiatives under the Climate Change Action Plan. And again, I just wanted to thank everyone, Mark and Stephanie, for putting this together with the Municipal Climate Change Action Center. And I wanted to thank my colleagues who are also here, and we are ready to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Thanks to the team for that presentation. A few questions in the chat here, and I imagine some more will trickle in as we kind of get to this now. I'll let Steph start to sort through those. Maybe I'll throw my slides up here again and then just start with one question for you. Maybe Andres, can you talk a little bit about, you had it on one slide, but the next steps for the project coming up. So you got your AUC approval and you've completed milestone 1 through the program. Do you want to share what the details on the next step for your project is?
Yeah, I think for us right now is making sure that we have all the funds lined up and all the finance lined up to build it. I think there's also steps to be done to make sure that there's a procurement process. So I think the project envisions an RFP be released, and then it would be building it. Right. Awesome. Okay, Steph, I see some questions in there. Do you want to tackle the popular ones to start?
Yeah, you bet. There's just a couple so far, and they're mostly on costs for the project. So I think this was in one of your earlier slides is what percentage of the project costs were associated with being distribution connected, and then the same person followed up with, it looked like from the breakdown slide it was 5%. Was it so low because there were some nearby connection options? Right. Okay. So I think. And I think Trevor is around here. I don't know if Trevor, if you want to pick up this question, not Trevor, Robert.
Yeah, can you hear me, Andres?
Yes.
So, yeah, so that's a great question. The local connection was not excellent because the location is so important. Being located at Métis Crossing was so important. We really had to be quite innovative and work with ATCO closely to find ways to keep that connection cost reasonable. Because Métis Crossing was having an expansion, there was an opportunity there for a long-term load customer to be added, and so that helped a little bit. But we actually ended up working with ATCO to put in about 5 kilometers of wire to get to the cultural gathering center, and about 4 kilometers of that was put in at a larger diameter in expectation of connecting the solar farm, sometime next year. But ATCO worked with us very well in terms of figuring out whether we could do some switching on their system to get connected to a closer substation with better hosting capacity. And 5% doesn't sound like much, but the budget's $13 million, so that's still $600,000 for interconnection. It's not a small piece of the pie, and it definitely represents a significant investment to get that high quality distribution connection.
Super, thanks, Robert. So we'll go to the upvoted ones next here. How good will the solar generation be being so far north?
If you don't mind, I'll take that one as well.
I was just going to suggest that, Robert. Thank you.
If we look at the solar map of Alberta, there's a red zone that goes up to Red Deer basically, and then there's an orange zone that goes well to Edmonton and a little beyond. But the drop from red to orange is a few percentage points. Basically, even the green and yellow portions of the map that are relatively lower solar output are still far better than a lot of parts of the world. The example always is Germany has more solar installed than anybody, and they have 2/3 the solar potential that Alberta does. So in a macro sense, it's still pretty good. Even compared to the parts of Alberta where the map is, where the sun is, quote, better. One of the things that isn't often thought about is diversity of supply. So we're seeing a lot of commercial development in the southeast portion of Alberta. And the thing about solar is it's highly correlated. When the sun comes up, all that production is going to come online. And when a cloud moves over the southern part of Alberta, all that production is going to be affected. You know, there's some modeling that we've done that indicates that even being north, it's not all bad. It's not you know, the best possible sun, but the Métis Crossing Solar Project is going to be uncorrelated to an extent with some of that other production. And what that we believe is going to help with is it helps you to earn when some of the other projects aren't earning. And it may actually be a little bit of a hedge against, you know, some of the erosion of market pricing that will come as solar penetration increases in the southeast.
I wanted to mention just one thing there as well. You know, we thought a lot about the location of this project, and you know, economics is absolutely something, and research is something that we looked at. We also looked at the rich partnership that was there, the land availability. So these are all things that we've looked at when we decided. So yet there's you do generate a little bit less for being in the location that we are, but I think in terms of the overall like all-inclusive analysis, I think we decided that it made sense for a community-owned project.
Super, thanks. The next question we've got is, will there be opportunity for Métis businesses?
Perfect. I think I can answer that. I think absolutely. I understand the projects will hold a public RFP, and so that within that, I am really sure that there will be a space for Métis contractors to be included in the building of that project.
Super, thanks. We're going to go to one other one here. So, and this is, again, should be a pretty quick one. On one of the slides, on the revenue slide, I think, what percentage was for community funds on that slide? I think they just missed it.
Oh.
Do you have that available?
I have. Well, I can. I don't think we're sharing my slides anymore, but I think
you can put it back up if you like.
Oh, okay. Sure.
We'll get back to that. Yeah, and I by the time I saw the question, we'd moved on as well. So.
Okay. I have my slides up, but I think I need to. I can give you the short answer before I show it. I think it was 5%.
Okay.
And maybe that's what I'm going to do, because it's going to be. I can't figure this out right now.
You bet.
Yeah, but it's 5% of the revenue. You have to keep in mind that about 60 or 65%, if I recall correctly, that slide, it goes to debt servicing, debt repayment, as well as overhead costs and operation, right? So it's really out of the profit piece is significant. What we decide, the proposal that we put through MCCAC is to provide a kind of a proportional size of the profits to this community development fund. So if the project generates more revenue, the community development fund goes up proportionally. Again, and then the other piece is when we talk about revenue, that would be revenue that the M&A would have to invest in its social program. So to me, that is also a community development fund. We just haven't named it a community development fund for the purposes of this project, right? But it would lead to Métis citizens programs, for instance.
And just to clarify then, presumably if, you know, the largest percentage is going to debt servicing, that also means that as that debt is serviced over time, then that the amount going to the community fund will increase over time as well.
Exactly. So the first years, it's kind of like a mortgage. You're paying a whole bunch of interest, right? You want to pay it down, and then as you go along, it becomes a little bit better. Yep.
Super. Okay. Next question that was we'll go to an upvoted one here. There's a lot of labor involved with installing modules. Will the MNA train its citizens on installation, which will create job opportunities?
I think the desire is to have a public RFP where benefits like that are included in that decision process.
Great, thanks. Okay, with the Community Development Fund, can local citizens invest in the project? If so, how is this being administered?
I think I'm going to reach out to my colleague Trevor Anderson to answer this one. Oh, do we have him?
Hi there. Yep.
Yeah, there he is.
Hi there. Yeah, that's certainly an option that we're looking into right now. You know, there's still decisions to be made at the M&A level, and obviously with our partners. on this opportunity. But Andres spoke to the opportunity to create a co-op piece where businesses and citizens and folks from the region have an opportunity to invest their own dollars in the project. So if that comes to fruition, we will certainly be making that public.
Super, thanks, Trevor. So the next one we've got, at the point that the RFP is ready to come out, how would a contractor be able to participate in that? I think we might have a contractor on the line.
I don't know if this is insanely clear right now for me, but I think if you, we can certainly provide our contact information, and if you give me your contact, we'll make sure that once that is released, we reach out to you. I think we want to make sure that I think the project is interested in making sure that there's involvement for sure, and we get as many bids as we can.
Yeah, and maybe just a general note for anyone not aware, if it's a public RFP, you just want to continue to check Alberta Purchasing Connection, and you would be able to see it when it's live there as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So the next one, in what ways are you communicating and engaging local citizens to quote unquote toot your horn in either the process or when you begin and complete construction? Anyone?
Well, I think for us is, I think one of the things that we didn't really talk about is within the M&A Climate Change Action Plan, there's this capacity initiative we've undertaken. So obviously with the current pandemic, it's a little bit harder to do events where we are engaging with citizens directly. But webinars like this is a way for us to kind of raise the profile of this project, especially now that we have regulatory approval. It's a little bit difficult to toot your horn when you're still dealing with the regulators. Our hope is that we do more of that as time progresses.
Super, thanks, Andres. And the next one, with the Community Development Fund. Oh, sorry, I already asked that one. Pardon me. Next one. There's one person with lots of questions. So it's great. In what ways are you planning to keep the soil and productivity under the solar racking systems? Maintenance of our healthy soil is so critical in mind.
I think maybe Robert can take this one.
I can answer that, Andres, if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Métis Crossing at the macro scale has a biologist engaged to, not using the right words, Juanita, but the idea of choosing food production at the site that's consistent with the site and with the climate and with the circumstances. And we've had with that expert, and what we're planning to do on the site is to choose a vegetation cover that will, basically self-feed the soil, in the sense that it'll be a mix of grasses and forbs. We'll include some clover so that it never needs to be fertilized. It'll be relatively low, like slow growing, suitable for grazing and or mechanical maintenance like mowing if that's necessary from a fire prevention perspective. We're quite mindful about creating something that holds the soil in and is sustainable, but we're not committing to one type of maintenance or another. Certainly grazing sheep is a very growing popular solution, and we want to have that option available.
Super, thanks, Robert. The next one we've got is, what level of local renewable energy development expertise do you see staying in the region once the general contractor has completed the project? Does it create opportunity for future smaller projects developed completely at the local level?
I don't know, Adam, do you want to kind of talk about it? Because I feel like this kind of relates to that community development fund.
Yeah, the community development fund is a very important.
You're pretty quiet there, Adam.
Oh, sorry, is that better?
That's better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the community development fund is very important to this project, and I think that the reason why the town decided not to go through the extra hoops and become shareholders, because then the shareholder, the revenue from this project flows directly into the general revenue, where currently with the setup of the community project, there'll be a committee deciding on what projects are going to be funded. So I think that's how the wealth is going to be shared amongst the citizens. And of course, the whole idea is to invest into projects that would promote the green energy and renewable energy within the Smoky Lake County region and beyond.
Exactly. And so I'm looking at Joe. I think it's Joe's question. I think exactly that what you're putting on the question is exactly the kind of what I'm hearing is the desire for this community development fund. So it would aim to incent this type of local renewable energy expertise and projects.
Super, thanks. Next one, how many years is your projected payback for the infrastructure?
Robert's on the line, financial guru.
Yeah, so it depends how you do the math. I mean, what we've tried to do when we model, we've projected both the a debt repayment schedule and a community fund schedule. We wanted to, we want to start generating community fund dollars as soon as is practical. So we've modeled that as a fairly long payback. Just in simple terms, that $13 million worth of capital cost is going to produce about $1 million worth of revenue a year, depending on the year and the weather and the pool price and such. So, this industrial scale project, the very best ones are seeing like a 10-year payback, and the worst ones are seeing about a 15-year payback. And we expect this one to be right kind of in the middle of that. We're going to try and execute it, as cost effectively as possible to bring that capital cost down, which will speed it up. But in rough and dirty terms, that's sort of the number.
Great. Thanks, Robert. We've got a few comments here. Well, I'll just read out the comments, then we'll get to the next question. So kudos to all the partners, proponents, ATCO, Alberta Government and Climate Action Centre, absolutely excited for all, so that's great. And then allowing M&A citizens to invest in this project would be a great model for future financing of M&A projects, creating wealth for its citizens. Another one, congrats to the project thus far and great job. Any research indicators for employment increases to our region with the project? Sorry, that was a question. Are there any research indicators for employment increasing? Yeah.
I think there's going to be a good opportunity.
The same thing.
There's going to be a good opportunity for employment, and because I think we had waited for that at the RFP level. Now that we have regulatory approval, I think that's kind of a good space to look at benefits like that.
Okay. Next one, the public RFP system often leaves little room for Métis businesses. Can the MNA create requirements in the RFP that scores higher for submissions with Métis content and Métis contractors?
I can take that one, Andreas. Because this is a project funded with funding from the government, there is certain aspects that are going to be difficult to put in the RFP. It'd be very difficult to say that only certain people can benefit from the project and not others. And that's to deal with the federal and provincial treaties that have been signed with Europe and North America. So nothing to do with our will to do that is definitely there, but our ability to do that may not be.
Right. And what I would say is, I think that's something that we absolutely, the M&A are looking at. I know, and I think in terms of procurement, there is a space for Métis contractors potentially to score higher. And I think it would have to go through like a board once that's set up. But I absolutely feel like that's absolutely the right space to make sure that those benefits are captured. And I know that in previous exercises like this, the M&A has allowed for that. So I don't see why that would be different in this case.
Okay, great. And the last one that we've got here, does the infrastructure payback include the replacement of the solar modules? And they mentioned batteries, but I don't think there are any batteries associated with this system.
Well, we're not really expecting a lot of replacements. We'll do a procurement of about maybe 0.5%, something like that. So 10,000 cells, 10,000 modules, there might be, an extra 50, maybe an extra 100. And, and that's mostly to cover breakage during installation or, occasional failures. The longevity of these modules is very strong. You'll see a very low failure rate over the 25-year projected life. And even after 25 years, the output guarantees are in the 85% range. And so we won't really expect to be replacing these modules at anytime soon. There'll be a small maintenance store, just because if in 10 years one quits, you can't get a replacement because the technology changes so much over time.
Super, thanks. And I think that's it for questions at the moment.
Yeah, that looks like they're trickling off, so that works quite well with our time. I'll maybe just go through the very last slides that we had up here to close out. If there's a couple more that come in, we can grab those. If not, we'll be looking to end right on time, so that's great. So just as closing, we wanted to touch on a couple of the other programs and services that the Municipal Climate Change Action Centre is involved in offering, as though Steph and I are particular to our renewables programs and this challenge. It's our duty to share widely everything we're doing. So touch on a couple of these programs that you see on your screen here. Of course, we have the Alberta Municipal Solar Program and the Solar for Schools program, which are our microgeneration PV rebate programs that we offer here at the Action Centre that have had great uptake so far. We also have a number of programs on the energy efficiency side of things. So there's the Recreation Energy Conservation Program for incentivizing energy efficiency retrofitting of rec centers in municipalities. We also have the Electric Vehicles for Municipalities program, which incentivizes the transition of municipal fleets to EVs and all the cost savings associated with that. And then there's also a number of advisory and support programs that we have for capacity building. So the Municipal Energy Manager program provides grants to municipalities to hire their own in-house energy management professionals to really be a focal point to take on these types of projects that we're talking about today, and not have them have to be on the side of the desk of someone else who's very busy at the municipality. So a great opportunity there if you're interested. And then also we have some great advisory services through a partnership with the FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, through the Partners for Climate Protection program, which can help your municipality basically outline everything from your first steps to creating a climate action plan and following those milestones through to executing it and getting support for that all along the way. So do reach out if you're interested in any of those programs. And with that, I'll just throw up our thank you slide with our contact information. If there's any specific questions about our programs, of course, reach out to us at the MCCAC, and any questions about the program, about these projects that you've heard about over the last couple of days, you can also feel free to direct us at the MCCAC, and we'll get you in touch with the right project team members there. So not seeing any more questions come through. So
there was one more, Mark, but looks like Adam might be typing to reply to it, but I'll read it out anyway. Is there an opportunity in the future to add on to the current system?
Okay.
I'm not sure. Maybe Adam, do you want to speak to it just verbally, or just?
Yeah. So right now, physically, yes, there is a ability to add, but we are limited by the small generation limit currently in the legislature, which is 5 megawatts, right? So I think that's physically there is ability to add to the to this.
So the 5 megawatts would actually just be for microgeneration systems, and with yours being distribution connected, you would have the ability to go larger than that. But maybe Robert wants to speak to the hosting capacity limits if he's still here.
Yeah, at the end of at the location where we're located, I mean, there's trees around us for openers. That is a challenge. We have discussed there's land to the north. It would probably mean quite a bit of ADCO distribution system upgrades to get more hosting capacity at this precise location. but I'm more, I think that on one hand, I think let's get through this one before we look to the next one. But at the same time, I think a partnership at another area in the county on the ATCO system is still quite valid and viable. But I think that when we think about siting solar, we're not averse to having several small projects rather than one big project. That's sort of the community scale distribution size approach. So the answer is yes and no.
I
hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Robert.
I can just throw in a comment there. I think there's absolute desire to see how this one goes, and I think it doesn't. My hope is that it all goes well, and it would be a great kind of example to expand and do other projects like this, in alignment with the goals of the M&A Climate Change Action Plan. So it is exciting.
Yeah, and the message, maybe to sum up our points, is that it's not about this specific location, building it bigger at this spot. What we're really trying to do is get the collaboration model nailed, and see that blossom, continue within this collaboration, but see it blossom in other communities across Alberta as well.
Yeah, I might add to that really quickly that one of the purposes of this challenge from the Municipal Climate Change Action Center side, and part of the reason that there is the knowledge transfer piece that is part of our funding, is that the idea is that the projects we funded through the challenge are hopefully an example of how to do this and sort of set the groundwork for other projects like this to happen in Alberta. So we hope to see others pop up as well.
Yep, absolutely, well said. All right, well, we're a couple minutes over, so I'll wrap things up in respect of everybody's time, but thanks so much to the whole team for sharing with us today. And like I mentioned on the webinar yesterday, our hope in tying in with this knowledge transfer piece is to be able to hopefully do another one of these a little later on in the future as the project reaches its next milestones, and share some of those lessons learned and continue this learning journey right up until completion and afterwards. So stay tuned to all our channels for any news on that. And thanks again, everyone, for attending. Have a great afternoon.